So the next topic I wanted to talk about here was the issue of Julian Assange, and this is specifically regarding Tulsi Gabbard, who is running for the Democratic presidential nomination. She is not a long time Democrat. I think she's been around for, I think this is like her third or fourth term, I think. So she's been around for like eight or so years. She was a former member of the DNC chair, former, I think, vice chair or co-chair of the DNC. She resigned in protest to support Bernie Sanders. So this is an article from Newsweek where it says Tulsi Gabbard says she would drop Julian Assange charges and pardon Edward Snowden. So that headline already catches your eye. So it says Representative Tulsi Gabbard, a Democratic presidential candidate, said the U.S. should drop criminal charges against Julian Assange and Edward Snowden. The military veteran said during a lengthy interview on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast this week that WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange and national security whistleblower Edward Snowden should not be prosecuted for disclosing information. Quote, "What would you do about Julian Assange? What would you do about Edward Snowden?" That's what Rogan said. That's what Rogan asked her. Gabbard said if she elected, she would drop the Assange charges and pardon Snowden. Quoting Gabbard here, we have got to address why Snowden did things the way he did them. She said, you hear the same thing from Chelsea Manning, how there is not an actual channel for whistleblowers like them to bring forward information that exposes egregious abuses of our constitutional rights and liberties, period. There was not a channel for that to happen in a real way, and that's why they ended up getting the path that they did and suffering the consequences. In June 2013, Snowden handed over to journalists a trove of National Security Agency documents detailing a sprawling surveillance apparatus used by global intelligence agencies. The leak showed how the systems could be used to spy on U.S. citizens through their phone calls, text messages, and internet use. After fleeing the country to Hong Kong, a warrant was issued for Snowden's arrest. Snowden was left stranded in Russia, where he was provided asylum. And that's probably a large reason why a lot of Democrats and Republicans can't stand Russia, because what Snowden did was expose the government that was run under the Barack Obama administration, but started under the Bush administration. But obviously something that both administrations were taking part in, which was this illegal spying on Americans, and they hate that Snowden in this case exposed that. So let's see the rest of the next part of this article here. It says Gabbard told the podcast host that she could still remember the day she first read the details about mass surveillance in the American press. I was shocked, she said. That was something that Snowden uncovered and released, something that I don't know that even as members of Congress we would have been aware of. Gabbard continued. So now that we are aware of it, we can take action to close these loopholes, to change those policies, to protect our civil liberties. Was the NSA going to disclose that information voluntarily? Absolutely not. Assange, whose organization helped facilitate Snowden's escape, was dramatically arrested last month and has been charged with conspiracy to commit computer hacking for agreeing to break a password to a classified U.S. government computer. That's what the Justice Department said. On Monday, Sweden reopened its investigation into a rape allegation against Assange, who is now serving 50 weeks in a high-security UK prison relating to a 2010 bail violation. As a result, the WikiLeaks founder, who denies the assault allegation, is now facing 2 extradition charges. I'll just read the last part of this now. What happened with his, this is quoting Gabbard again, it says, what happened with his arrest and all of this stuff that just went down, I think poses a great threat to our freedom of the press and to our freedom of speech. The fact that the Trump administration has chosen to ignore how important it is that we uphold our freedoms and go after him after him, it has a very chilling effect on both journalists and publishers, and also on every one of us as Americans. It was a warning call saying, look, what happened to this guy, it could happen to you. It could happen to any one of us. It says, according to pollsters, Joe Biden remains the most likely president to become the Democratic nominee for the presidential election. 2020 presidential election, Real Clear Politics reported Gabbard still trails far behind her Democrat rivals, including Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and Pete Buttigieg. That's great. That's a great statement from Tulsi Gabbard. I am not surprised to see that she has that position. I'm very happy to see that she has a forum to come out and say that, such as the Joe Rogan Experience podcast, which is a great podcast. I love Joe Rogan. I have been a big fan of him ever since the days of watching him on Fear Factor, as well as watching him on the Ultimate Fighting Championship, which is mixed martial arts. I'm a big MMA fan. And at some point I discovered his podcast, which I remember listening to many times, many times when I'm studying, or many times when I'm going to the gym or something. I would always enjoy Joe Rogan's podcast. So I'm a big fan of his, and I'm glad to see that he brings on great guests. He's brought on Kyle Kalinske of Secular Talk many times. He's brought on Jimmy Dore many times. He's brought on Abby Martin many times. He's brought on Lee Camp many times. All people that are just wonderful, wonderful progressives. And he's also brought on a lot of right-wingers, which people have taken issue with. He's addressed these problems a couple times. He just says he likes listening to all different kinds of point of views. A lot of people take issue with the fact that he does not push back against what right-wingers say, what a lot of alt-right type people say. But that's a side note. But when it comes to Gabbard's comments, though, that's great for her to say, and I wish Bernie Sanders would do this. I really, really wish Bernie Sanders would come out and make statements like this. He does not do it because he knows he's going to get he's going to get dinged by the Democratic Party, by the DNC, by Democratic loyalists that say, oh, well, now you're in favor of overthrowing the country. It's just a bunch of bullshit. So people just say all this stuff against Bernie. Whereas, Tulsi says that those people already don't like Tulsi Gabbard. So if they see Tulsi Gabbard saying that she supports Assange, supports Snowden, the people are just going to be like, all right, well, fuck her anyway. I didn't really like her anyway. But if it's Bernie Sanders, since Bernie Sanders has a much bigger name recognition, Bernie Sanders has a much bigger platform, he's much more well-known, they're going to dump on him much easier. And I'm not just talking about the Democrats. I'm not talking about the politicians. I'm not talking about the members of the DNC. I'm talking about people, voters. So the loyalists that you see on Twitter, social media, all these people are going to hate Bernie even more. Now they're going to hate him anyway. But it's like the whole idea of like having more essentially like information from the likes of Snowden, from the likes of Assange. People hate this, but they also hate the fact that Assange exposed the DNC, exposed what they were doing, exposing the fact that they were rigging the primary against Bernie Sanders, the fact that they that Hillary Clinton and her team and the DNC were pushing Donald Trump, Ben Carson, and Ted Cruz as Pied Pipers to face Hillary Clinton in the general election. So these things were all exposed by WikiLeaks. There was several speeches that Hillary Clinton gave to Wall Street executives, where the famous Wall Street executive speeches that Hillary never wanted to release. Many times, a lot of them were released by WikiLeaks, and Democrats can't stand that. And a lot of them say, like, well, why don't you expose Republicans? But see, what these idiot loyalists in the Democratic Party and the Democratic voters don't understand is that WikiLeaks is not a hacker. WikiLeaks just receives the information, so they don't do the hacking. WikiLeaks receives the information and gives it out for all of us to see. So WikiLeaks is not in the business of like, oh, I'm going to type something and then I'm going to find it and then I'm going to show everybody. No. Their job is to expose. What WikiLeaks does is what real journalists in this country and just really almost honestly all over the world should be doing, and they don't do. WikiLeaks are the actual journalists. They're the actual whistleblowers, or well, they're not the whistleblowers, but they're the ones that give the voice to the whistleblowers. But they're the ones that expose. They're the ones that expose what is going on regarding corruption in this country and this world, and the elites and the oligarchs and the corrupt people in this grand scale of political, this political apparatus. They don't want these things to be exposed, so they hate Assange, they hate Edward Snowden, they hate WikiLeaks, they hate any kind of whistleblower, I would say. But Assange and Snowden are the most prominent ones, so those are the people that they hate the most. But I mean, there are whistleblowers that have come out with, they have come out with some of the most important information that a lot of people don't know about. And I mean, for Christ's sake, like let's just go down like a list of like some of the people that have exposed the different like corrupt operations and have been whistleblowers over I don't know how many decades, how many years, centuries perhaps, but so obviously aside from Edward Snowden, one of the most well-known whistleblowers in history, I would say, many would say, obviously, is Daniel Ellsberg. And Daniel Ellsberg he exposed what was referred to as the Pentagon Papers. And for those of you that do not know, the Pentagon Papers was a United States Department of Defense history of the United States' political and military involvement in Vietnam from 1945 to 1967, which is arguably, not including the Iraq War and Afghanistan War, all these different wars that were involved right now, but one of the worst wars that the United States was involved in because there was so many American casualties. And it also involved a lot of Vietnamese casualties and a lot of civilians being killed. And I mean, the Vietnam War was a lot of people would consider the Vietnam War to be a loss for the United States because it was an ill-fated war and it was something that we should have never gotten involved in, and we were there for 20 plus years, and we were doing fucked up shit to millions and millions of innocent Vietnamese, and thanks to the Pentagon Papers, that got exposed, finally. And thanks to Daniel Ellsberg, and Daniel Ellsberg is considered a whistleblower, is considered somebody that is, enamored, revered, somebody that, is a hero, and he is. He should be, absolutely he is. And, the fact that people don't consider Edward Snowden as one of those is just, it's amazing, because what is the difference between what Edward Snowden did and what Daniel Ellsberg did? Both of them exposed the government. Both of them came out as whistleblowers. Both of them gave information to kind of a third party and then released it. And I mean, and at that time it seemed, and I don't know who Ellsberg released the information to. I believe it was the Washington Post. I'd have to look that up. Off the top of my head, I think it was the Washington Post. Anyway, whatever it was, there was no WikiLeaks back then, though. So obviously, whoever Ellsberg gave the information to, he obviously gave it to somebody that was a journalist and was somebody that released this information to a major publication. And because obviously there was no internet, there was no kind of non-journalistic entities to give to, so you have to go to a journalist, right? So he ended up giving it to whoever that person or whoever that entity was, and released it. And luckily back then we had real journalists. Back then when the Pentagon Papers were released and all that stuff was exposed, back then we had journalists. These days we don't. So because we don't have real journalists today, and we have people that cater to the establishment and cater to the deep state, we have people that don't want to get criticized or called out for doing things that the deep state and the the military industrial complex doesn't want. So, and that's something that Edward Snowden did, and God forbid he did it. Oh my God, how dare you? Chelsea Manning, he's another whistleblower. He exposed a great, not a great, but a very, frankly, disturbing video. It was an Apache helicopter video. I'm gonna put the link to it. The link to the video it's on YouTube. I'll put the link to the video of it in the description box. But it's an Apache helicopter video shown in, I believe it was Iraq, where an Apache helicopter, I think it was Marines, I believe. I forgot which branch of the military, but it was a helicopter that was shooting down at innocent civilians who, I think the members of the military were claiming were Iraqis with guns and weapons or whatever, AK-47s or whatever the hell the guns they had, and they were apparently a threat, so they decided to shoot at them. So and they killed a lot of them, and they would kill a lot of like the first responders that were trying to come and help the people that were killed or shot or injured or whatever, and they killed those people too. And the whole time during that and this was all caught on video footage for some reason. And the whole time when they were shooting at these innocent, who turned out to be innocent people, and a lot of them were reporters, I believe, too. They were shooting at these people. They were laughing. They were making jokes. They were like, "Oh, you got him? Oh, he got fucked up. that's pretty damn funny over there. Look at that guy." So they were cracking jokes the entire time. They're fucking, shooting at these innocent people for, I guess, their personal enjoyment, I guess. So, yeah, just a bunch of pricks, man. I mean, so thank God for Chelsea Manning. Thank God for Edward Snowden. Thank God for Julian Assange. I would hope if Tulsi Gabbard were president, because, so Chelsea Manning did get, she did get pardoned eventually by President Obama, but she's back in jail now for another bogus bullshit charge. I haven't had time to look into the details of it, but she's in jail again. I mean, I would hope if she had the opportunity to give her freedom, the freedom that she had and the freedom that she deserves, hopefully she, Tulsi Gabbard, if she were president, would do that as well. So, and I'm glad to see Tulsi Gabbard say this. I wish Bernie Sanders would say this. I wish a lot of other candidates, Elizabeth Warren, which I wouldn't expect her to, but I wish she would say this, But a lot of these people, a lot of these politicians, aside from Tulsi Gabbard, maybe Mike Gravel, aside from that, a lot of these people don't have the balls to say these things because they don't want to get called out as being, anti-American or anti-whatever, and even among Democrats, which is sad. So it's pathetic.